Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you first got involved with Dash and what is your current involvement with Dash.
Yeah. All right. So my name's Cole Allen. I'm a chief information officer at a state college in Florida, which basically just means that, my job is to align departmental priorities with the institutional goals, right? And so I'm a meeting guy. I go to a lot of meetings, and I make sure that all the different departments that are underneath me are aligned with what the other executives in the organization or whoever the stakeholders may be, that their interests are being met, right? And so with that, I manage a few different departments. Those departments are like, before I even get to that, general IT management, complex project management, relationship management, contract review, negotiation, and then probably the biggest one is our business processes development, that kind of stuff. That's really where IT has been heading, at least in higher education. So my department's really end up being that business process review, which is our business analysts, what they do. Our database administrators, help desk support, IT project management, cybersecurity, networking, system administration, all those different departments is kind of what I oversee, and I have excellent managers over those areas that are really good at what they do. So my job is really to be a middleman, right, between the interests of the organization and the capabilities and the priorities of these very important individual departments. So my work history, I've pretty much stayed in higher ed. I've got 12 years of higher ed, administration of some kind. I've worked at community college. I've worked at large research university. I'm working at state college. My education background, I have a master's. I have my MBA, so a master's in business administration. I have a bachelor's in organizational management. And then as far as my experience with cryptocurrency and with Dash and what got me interested in that, it was early 2014. As tried to mine Bitcoin, or something, and it was already impossible unless you had, ASICs and all that kind of stuff. So like, I guess most people probably were doing, they're looking at altcoins and that kind of stuff. And back then it was, Feathercoin and all these things. And one of them stuck out, and it was the dark coin, really because a few specific reasons. One was Evan Duffield. Not that I knew anything about him, just the fact that it had a real person as a lead developer, which is really unusual back then. Outside of maybe Litecoin was the only other one. And but he looked like he was trying to make a better Bitcoin, not a test net for Bitcoin. And I really liked that a lot. I thought that, here's some obvious things that could be fixed. So, and privacy was a huge one at the time. And then, so I invested a little bit and started following and learning stuff about the community at that time. And then, the idea of masternodes and stuff was coming out. And this was, the second layer system was mind blowing to me at the time. I remember we were all bouncing around ideas, even in my circles of like what that means. Like, you could have a VPN network, which now there's VPN coins, which obviously is a good idea we didn't do that because none of those are taken off. But, even people talking about a second internet, and all this stuff. And then way more powerful, simpler ideas comes from Evan, like instant send, right? And it's just like, oh my God, okay, I'm sold. And I remember his first video that he posted about instant send. He just had his little MacBook up and two little console windows and a masternode CLI window, and being like, oh, well, look, it's confirmed immediately. And it's just like, this is the future, right? And around that time was also the Darkcoin Foundation had started, and I was like, I got to join that, and a couple of my friends had it as well, that I know in real life. And it was something that really, this outside of my family life and my work life, was probably like the third most important thing to me at the time. I was super watching this a lot. It was like watching a new type of technology be born. It was really, engrossing, and it was really fun to watch. So that's probably how I got into it. And then my experience since then has really been a masternode owner operator, that kind of stuff.
What is your view on the DIF investing in things that have nothing to do with cryptocurrency? These investments might increase Dash purchasing power through profit being used to burn Dash, but they do not increase Dash adoption and usefulness.
Well, so I saw this question posted, by somebody on Discord, and I don't think that the DIF in this case should be restricted in any way in any type of investments it can make. I don't think that it's the job of the supervisors to this role that I'm applying for, to be the one who directs that type of investment. I think that that's the call of the masternode owners themselves. I'd really rather envision something like maybe a non-binding sentiment poll. I saw that there were some updates with using the voting key for in the Dash Masternode tool and stuff like that. And so I think there's ways that we could do, sentiment reading of the community that you just get a general idea of what's going on without having to have full-blown monthly managed votes and all that, where it would just give the supervisors some direction on what they would like to see. But I personally, as a master owner, I would honestly rather them not be limited and let maybe the experts that we hire for being the investment manager and the directors to be the ones to direct that need, along with the guidance of the master owners themselves and what their interests are. And then also, purchasing power does drive adoption, and adoption drives purchasing power. These aren't two entirely separate things. I think that this is cyclical, right? They're just two sides or two different sections of the same process. And how purchasing power drives adoption would be like, a community excitement, trust in the value, right? Because we're going to be digital cash. We need to make sure that people trust that the purchasing power is going to be there for them. If we're going to these like third world countries, especially, and being like, hey, trust this one instead, and then they lose value again on top of what they've already lost with their fiat currencies, that's not a good proposition. So it is important to have purchasing power, and it does drive adoption. Also, obviously, the size of our DAO, right? So the higher the value of Dash, the more we have to invest back into the space. So I think that they're kind of two sides of the same coin, not two competing interests. Like, I saw the original question being phrased on Discord.
Do you think the DIF should make specific Treasury proposals to fund each individual investment, or do you believe it should make general proposals for funds to be invested as per the DIF's general investment strategy?
Yes and no, and I'll tell you why. So I know that's a very non-committal. As a masternode owner, again, for me personally, I would prefer that the DIF or DIF-directed funds to be requested in a general single request, maybe monthly or whenever, and that general request instead of per investment. There's a couple reasons for this. One is, the timing. A lot of times timing of investments can't wait until the end of the month or next month or whatever, or is the funding going to be there or not? I'd rather than be operating off of, the available funds they have, a general revenue. But as far as the self or actual individual projects being voted on by masternode owners, I think the bigger part that we're not really talking about nearly enough is actual proposals that are giving stake to the DIF in their initial proposal. So maybe they engaged the DIF beforehand before they made the proposal. Doesn't mean that the DIF thinks that it's a good or bad proposal, but maybe they come and say, hey, let's go back in time. Say Alt 36 was just now getting started and they just now wanted to ask for, X number of dollars from us. We could say, well, yeah, but this is that, we're going to need this percentage or whatever of ownership in this. If there's ever a problem or whatever, we can either sell our stake or we're going to get something out of it, or we can use, our future influence in that company to ensure that, Dash stays exclusive or whatever it may be. I don't know. We haven't been able as a network to have any kind of stake in ownership in these DAO requested funds. And so for me, I love the DAO. I love the governance. I hate the grant style investment. It does not have accountability, right? Once the money has been distributed, there's no follow-up accountability other than if you re-request funds, you might not get funded next time because you gypped us the first time. And that's not an amazing way to do business. So I think being able for the network to have some ownership in these projects is like more important than even the DIF being able to invest in real estate or whatever it wants to invest in, or whatever the masterminds wanted to invest in. That's really where the power is. So I think there's going to be lots of opportunities, or at least I hope, maybe I'm an optimist, I don't know. I hope there's going to be lots of opportunities for masternode owners to be able to choose a product and vote on an individual product and it include ownership and stake in that product when possible. So if there's any future proposal owners listening right now, I as a single master owner, would greatly appreciate you sharing some of this, with adding stake to the network. That's really what we need. And master owners, we need to demand it, honestly. But we haven't been able to demand it in the past. And I think this is a great opportunity for us, and more powerful than probably any other thing that we're going to talk about with the DIF, really.
Do you think the DIF should take a masternode vote every time it proposes to buy and burn Dash with its profit, rather than reinvesting those funds?
No, not at this time, at least. So I think the power of the DAO and the power of the Master Network is we can change. We can change our minds. We can vote differently. We can do whatever. But at this point, I can't imagine that that's really a good idea at this point in time. And the reason I say that is because it's. I think that we should. I think there's opportunities to do this in a way that's really beneficial, and maybe we as a network need to get together and decide what that criteria is. I mean, maybe when the buybacks happen, they don't happen all on the same day. Maybe they happen slowly over time. Maybe they're standing buy orders at a set percentage level below spot price, and it's managed by trading bots. I don't know, that provide some liquidity in the market. Because really what's important for adoption in terms of price is that stability. If we're going to be digital cash, we need to have the stability of cash, which I know everybody says, oh, fiat, it can be inflated forever and all that stuff. And it does get inflated every year, but it's not anywhere near as volatile, at least the US dollar, right? When I think of cash, I think US dollar, because I'm an American, but we're not even close to that kind of stability. And I'm not saying we're ever going to get there, but our stability needs to be upwards, right? And it needs to be a store of value as well as cash. And these huge market drops and all of that, if we could use this as, it's not a circuit breaker, but something to help ease the downside and be able to purchase, off of the market, some of those big dips that happen that can be devastating to some people who are using this or living off of this, especially in countries like Venezuela and whatnot. So I think that there's, and maybe that's not the direction the master owners want to go. Maybe they want to do a once a year buy all at one time, kind of like Bitcoin does with its halving, or something, and its event everybody can be ready for. I don't know. But it's going to be a long time before the DIF has that kind of purchasing power. So I really don't think it's that big of a deal yet anyway. And hopefully, me again being an optimist, hopefully we're entering a multi-year bull market here. And so the DIF should be sitting on its hands, and just building up a portfolio, reinvesting in itself, and being able to help weather the bad times when the bad times come, if that's possible to do. But that's just my opinion as a masternode owner. That would not come into play as a supervisor here. But that's just, if you're asking me as a masternode owner, what I believe, it's that. Again, something like a sentiment vote, or a poll, let's call it, something like that would be more beneficial in hearing from what the master owners think is a good idea. And there's a bunch of smart guys out and people out there who are in our masternode community that could probably come up with some ideas much better than the one I just gave. But I think there's a lot of different ways to do this, and we shouldn't just lock ourselves in.
What are your thoughts on the DIF investing in advertising and improving its image to gain further traction?
I don't see a need for DIF to advertise. I'm not sure what that would gain. We're not looking for investors, right? Like, it would give to an ownerless, memberless, venture capital firm. It doesn't make sense. There's really no reason to advertise at all. What I do see advertising opportunities in would be for general Dash advertisements, if master owners choose to go that way, where it makes sense to highlight the DIF, right? And so using the DIF is like, hey, this is another cool thing we were doing that other people aren't, another space we're innovating in. But advertising the DIF itself doesn't really make sense to me unless I'm missing something. But showing it as one of our key features and something that we have is definitely beneficial. We have news outlets, we can do press releases and that kind of stuff. But beyond that, I don't think it makes sense to spend money to advertise the DIF itself.
Which of these two statements do you agree with more? A, the DIF should be used to increase Dash purchasing power, or B, the DIF should be used to increase Dash adoption?
I think they're the same thing, honestly. Like I said earlier, the increasing the purchasing power and increasing adoption and usefulness. I think that the DIF's general fund requests that it asks for from the DAO, if it is to go that direction, just ask for a set amount of money, whatever that is, set amount of Dash to be able to invest in a self-directed way. Then I think those should be used to probably focus on Dash purchasing power. because the other side of the coin is the Dash adoption and usefulness, right? And so that is I think primarily being, I don't want to say taken care of, but those proposals tend to go through the DAO at this point, and that's I would say make up the majority of the DAO proposals. And honestly, if things happen the way they need to, and master owners start demanding stake in these projects, then even the DIF will be primarily made up of adoption and usefulness type investments, because those will come directly from the DAO. That's the way I believe it should and needs to work.
Currently, supervisors can run for re-election every year. Do you think there should be a cap on the number of consecutive terms a supervisor can take?
So term limits are interesting. So in politics, term limits, you have all the different arguments for them and all the different things. And I lived in Missouri. I grew up in Missouri, and we have for our house there, they have 2 term limits. And it's really, really short. I might be one of the shortest in the country in term limits. And so what happens is that it's constant freshmen in there, right? And it takes forever to do business, and everybody has to learn all these things all the time and get all caught up. And that's the downside. The upside is that it gives other people an opportunity to get in there, and you get more diverse views. So term limits are interesting. For us, though, at this point, looking at our current number of even applicants for this position, right? I don't think we can get away with it. I think term limits I think we would be imposing them way too early on. Now, next go around, let's say next year it comes in and there's 50 applicants or something, absolutely. Let's start looking at something like that. I think that'd be beneficial. But at this point, I mean, when you have very, very few applicants, I think we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot by having term limits. I think from a logistics standpoint, it doesn't make sense. But then again, I mean, these aren't paid positions. There's no power to be had. It's not like it's not the same as politics, right? But whatever the master owners want, we should totally put into place. And again, that's why I think it's so important that we have a better mechanism of polling the master owners than we have now, especially when we need quick feedback or when designing proposals in the future, or just even sentiment in general. It's extremely important.
Is there any additional thoughts or comments you would like to share?
My entire career has been in public service, right? In higher education specifically, and only in state-funded, institutions. And so I've always been a public servant. And so I understand bureaucracy. I know all those things. I manage large budgets and large teams and complex initiatives. And honestly, obviously I'm not in higher education for the money, and I wouldn't be applying for the supervisor role for any money, because it's an unpaid position as well, right? So really, I would, the reason I applied for this was because I finally saw a real opportunity of an area that met, my skill, what I believe to be my skill sets, very well. And I was just like, I need to give back some to this community, more so than I have. And this is a great opportunity, and it matches my skill sets exactly. I absolutely have to put my name in this hat. It just makes sense. But obviously it's up to the master owners. Whatever they feel is best is what we're going to go with, obviously. And this is something that I like serving on committees. I enjoy that kind of stuff. I enjoy review. I have an MBA. I can read an income statement. I've taken finance and classes and accounting classes, and I'm not going to say I'm a finance auditor by any means, but I can at least talk the lingo, and I can understand what's in meetings, especially when talking about these investments and stuff, and follow along and know what's happening. And I'm sure some of these other applicants can do that as well, or they bring other complementary skill sets. But I think that what I have to offer is pretty much what we need to be a supervisor role in this capacity. And that's the only reason I put my name out there. I'm a pretty private guy for the most time. I wouldn't be on video, talking about being a master node owner and all that kind of stuff, unless I thought that I could bring some real value to the table here.